Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Susanna Harris. I'm a Director of Licensing at the Electrical Safety Authority. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the 15th Annual License Holder Meeting. I would first like to acknowledge the lands that constitute the present-day City of Mississauga, where our head office is located, as being part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and Wyandot nations. I would like to acknowledge that we serve the whole province of Ontario, and therefore ESA recognizes all the traditional territories across the province. Miigwech. Now on this slide, you will see the agenda for today's meeting. Being mindful of your time and busy schedules, we aim to make this meeting informative and brief. I wanted to note and acknowledge that the fact that there is a Canada against Belgium soccer game today. When we planned this meeting a year ago, we obviously could not have accounted for that. I hope it doesn't distract you from today's event. And I do want to say, go Canada, go. With respect to what we planned for you today, our goal is to make this session informative and value add. So we have ECRA Advisory Council Chair address. We have Director of Licensing update. We will also share ESA communication campaigns that we've conducted over the year. They are aimed to increase awareness about risks of hiring unlicensed individuals. Serge Laflamme will update you on remote inspections. We know that this would be of interest to all of you. I'm also very excited to introduce not one, but two keynote speakers today. Peter Ewald from Lakeland Solutions will present Project Speedier, a new microgrid community in the town of Parry Sound. It's also my pleasure to present Kara Clairman, President and CEO of Plug and Drive. She will share the trends and challenges that she and her team has noted in relation to widespread of electrical vehicles in the province. Further, due to popular demand, we continue to dedicate time to question and answer session and technical Q&A session. And I know many of you might be interested in that. Finally, for those who stay until the end, we will have a prize giveaway. It is this year GFCI AFCI testers. More details will be shared at the end of the meeting, so please stay tuned. And next, I would like to introduce Emily LaRose, Vice President, Regulatory and General Counsel.
Thank you very much, Susanna, and good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'd also like to welcome and acknowledge some of our guests who are here. We have a number of members of our board of directors, Adele Mallow, Dale McDonald, and Gary Oosterhoff, who bring their expertise and knowledge to assist ESA in its direction and strategy. We have members of our executive management team, Karen Rast, who is our Vice President of Communications, Strategy and Innovation, as well as Eric Kingston, our Vice President of Operations. And we have members of the ministry, which provides us oversight, Mary Beth Vasari and Esther Turner. Our Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery, the Honorable Khalid Rashid, asked that I share the following words of greetings from him. On behalf of the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery, please accept my warmest greetings on the occasion of the Electrical Safety Authority's 2022 Annual License Holder Meeting. I offer my very best wishes to your many dedicated master electricians and electrical contractors across Ontario who are attending virtually today. Electricity affects all Ontarians, from businesses to individual citizens. It is part of our daily lives, and we must not forget it can be a dangerous force. As the Minister responsible for consumer protection and public safety, I commend all of you for the invaluable services you provide to the citizens of our great province. As new technologies emerge, electrical safety is as important as ever. I applaud the Electrical Safety Authority and its electrical license holders for protecting Ontarians and fostering electrical safety. It's thanks to all of you, Ontarians can live, work, and play safe from electrical harm. I look forward to strengthening my ministry's partnership with the Electrical Safety Authority as we build a better Ontario. I hope your 2022 meeting is a great success. So those are the words of the Honourable Khalid Rashid, Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery. I would also like to pass along the greetings of our CEO, Josie Urzetic, who very much wanted to join us today. Unfortunately, circumstances have prevented her from being able to attend, and she asked that I share how fortunate she feels to lead such a great organization dedicated to preserving safety in the electricity sector and protecting the safety of all Ontarians. So on behalf of Josie and all of ESA, I especially want to recognize and thank all of the licensed electrical contractors and master electricians who are joining us today. We acknowledge all of the great work that you do and thank you for your commitment to safety. You'll see in the themes that are discussed in this license holder meeting that we are observing changes in the electricity sector. Among other things, we're seeing electrification of the transportation sector with ever-growing numbers of electric vehicles. As we observe those changes, we know that ESA also needs to evolve in order to remain relevant in the face of innovative new technologies and to be the voice of electrical safety at the table. All of us need to sharpen our skills and maintain awareness of these new technologies in order to continue to evolve in this new decarbonized economy. As a result, ESA and our LEC community need to work together to ensure that education and awareness of safety issues within our sector and by the public are held as a paramount importance. Our aim is to serve our stakeholder community better in furtherance of safety and consumer protection. Ways that we're doing this include using data and analytics to understand where the safety risks are in order to inform our safety campaigns. For example, we launched a youth safety awareness campaign targeting new workers who tend to take higher risks, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later. We're working on effectively communicating and raising awareness of electrical harm in areas where we know dangers may be higher. We're examining ways in which we can simplify our fees for our LECs that make them easier to understand and more predictable. We currently have a working group examining fee simplification, and that involves employees from our operations group and our finance group, as well as LEC representatives from ECAO and OEL. Enhancing digital service offerings to reduce administrative burden on LECs is also a priority. We know your time is valuable. We want you to be able to reschedule inspections from your phones with a mobile app, and we're working on it. We are improving the way we do remote inspections with photos or videos for inspections when that's an appropriate oversight tool, and you'll be hearing more about that a little later as well. Last year alone, our inspectors conducted almost 445,000 inspections. So whether it's a scheduling tool or remote inspections, we're working to prioritize digital projects that reduce burden for you while ensuring that we're adding value. This year, we also reached an important milestone as the 28th edition of the Ontario Electrical Safety Code was released, as well as our annual Ontario Electrical Safety Report. That safety report identified priority issues such as power line contacts while working, which accounted for 34% of all occupational electrical fatalities between 2012 and 2021. During this period, there was at least one critical injury to an electrical trade worker each year, and incidents tend to be associated with unsafe work practices. As a direct result of this data, ESA launched a youth safety outreach campaign, as I mentioned, and you'll hear more about that later. So in closing, I want to thank again all of our LECs and MEs who are meeting virtually with us today. We acknowledge your hard work and your dedication to electrical safety. I'd like to give a special shout out to Trademark Industrial, who is the 2022 Licensed Electrical Contractor Recognition Award recipient. This LEC has made outstanding contributions to our sector's safety culture and was recognized for these at our annual safety award ceremony last September. I would also like to sincerely thank all of the ECRA Advisory Council members. They provide valuable input and advice on licensing matters that impact all of you. A special thank you to Joe Kirby, Chair of ECRA, whose term is ending at the conclusion of this meeting. We thank him for his 8 years of service to ECRA and to ESA that has helped us deliver on our shared safety mandate. As Suzanne explained, today's license holder meeting has a full agenda focusing on topics that we really hope matter to you, our licensed holder community. So I will close my remarks now and hand the mic over to Joe Kirby to provide an update from ECRA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. Good afternoon. Welcome to our third annual virtual license holder meeting. I hope it has given a greater number of you the opportunity to attend the meeting. We're all faced with personal and professional challenges over the last couple of years, and we will continue having to adapt to how we live and work in this world as it continues to change. I want to recognize the important work that master electricians and licensed electrical contractors have done to help ensure electricity is delivered safely to Ontarians, despite so many hurdles. My name is Joe Kirby. I am a master electrician, licensed electrical contractor, and the outgoing chair of the Electrical Contractor Registration Agency Advisory Council, known as the ECRA Advisory Council. I am a member of the Electrical Contractors Association of Ontario. On behalf of ECRA, I would like to welcome and thank all of you for attending today's meeting. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the ECRA Advisory Council and describe the council's role for those of you who may not be familiar with it. Our members are Larry Allison, representing ESA's Consumer Advisory Council; Matthew Aston, representing the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario; Vince DeGasperis, representing the Utility Contractors Association of Ontario; Steve Delgidis, representing the Ontario Electrical League; Leo Gurlette, appointed by ESA; Cameron Hahn, licensed electrical contractor, representing the Ontario Electrical League; Larry Shaver, licensed electrical contractor, representing the Electrical Contractors Association of Ontario; Brian Smith, appointed by ACA; and Kathy Taylor, appointed by the ECRA Advisory Council, representing the community at large. ECRA meets about 5 times a year. In addition to our committees and working groups, and it has representation from various industry sectors to provide a balanced and comprehensive advice and perspective on licensing matters and the regulation of the electrical industry. The Advisory Council makes recommendation to ESA's Regulatory Affairs Committee of the Board of Directors on matters related to the licensing of electrical contractors and master electricians in Ontario. Working closely with ESA over the past year, we have provided insight and advice on our activities at the ESA Board of Director meetings, activities and initiatives to include in ESA's licensing strategy, ESA's business plans and compliance and enforcement initiatives, licensed electrical contractor awareness campaigns, and recommendations stemming from the Auditor General Report of 2020. I want to highlight our input on the Auditor General recommendations. ECRA voiced a concern over Auditor General Recommendation number 12 and recommended against broadening license exemption categories. We recommended to ESA and the ministry to maintain current licensing framework where only licensed electrical contractors are permitted to enter into contracts with the public to perform electrical installations. The Master Examining Committee has also been active as a part of a working group to update and modernize the Master Electrician exam and develop a competency profile for master electricians, which will, further the profession of the master electricians and formalize the skills required to work safely and ethically. Please look for the email from ESA containing the competency profile survey, and please fill it out. The survey closes on November the 25th, so don't miss the opportunity to provide your feedback on the initiative that will shape both current and future master electricians. Another example of collaboration and input provided by ECRA's Continuing Education Committee, which has been established earlier this year and had its first meeting a few weeks ago. It will be working with ESA to provide recommendations and suggestions regarding the development of continuing education curriculum for the master electricians. I wanted to say a few words also about the importance of continuing education in our profession. Every electrical professional who handles electricity knows that it can be dangerous, even deadly. As a result, taking course to know the latest requirements of the code is crucial for your safety, the safety of your workers, and your customers. The ECRA Advisory Council looks forward to playing a vital role as ESA progresses with the recommendations. The council will continue to be open and transparent with you, and ESA will continue to post council meeting minutes on esasafe.com to keep you up to date on the topics discussed at our meetings. In the end, this council represents you, the license holders. We are most effective when we know what is important to you. My term as chair of ECRA will end at the beginning of January 2023, and I am pleased to welcome our incoming chair, Cameron Hahn, who will be taking over the responsibilities of leading the advisory council. Cameron is the president of Gestech Electric, based in the Ottawa area. A master electrician himself, he brings a wealth of experience to the role, and I want to officially recognize and welcome him. If you have any questions about licensing or training or examinations, I encourage you to submit your questions to the licensing department. Please take the time to provide us with your thought on the ECRA Advisory Council's work. If you have any questions or comments for the council, Cam and our colleagues and I will be happy to respond to you. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll hand the meeting to the Director of Licensing. Thank you again.
All right, thank you, Joe. And I would also like to take a moment to join Emily and Joe to say thank you to the attendees today, and specifically to master electricians and electrical contractors who are in the audience. Ontarians put a lot of trust in you to ensure that their homes, businesses, and families are safe from electrical harm. So thank you for the work that you do every day to ensure electrical safety in Ontario. Before I begin my presentation, I'm going to echo a few words and say a few words about your questions. If you have questions throughout this meeting, please submit them through Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen. There's a team of ESA staff that are working behind the screen to answer questions as they arrive. Given the time limitation, we may not be able to answer all of your questions. However, we will collect them, review them, and we will try our best to answer as many as possible, either via Plugged In or Grounded in Ontario podcast. I want to also, before I begin, acknowledge hard work, dedication, and professionalism of the licensing department staff. Without these folks, none of the accomplishments and achievements that I will be reporting on today would have been possible. I'm sure that you know the names as I will announce them, and you will recognize them from your dealings with many of licensing department staff. Shanna Hole, licensing manager. I wanted to also acknowledge Shanna's role in preparation, organization, and success of today's license holder meeting. She has been absolutely instrumental in organizing this event, making sure that all of us know when to speak, what to say, and be in our places. So thank you, Shanna. Very big thank you to you. I also wanted to continue Scott Easton, project specialist, who is currently on rotation in another department. Christine Small, project specialist, who is backfilling for Scott. Cynthia McGill, enforcement coordinator. Kelly Claremont, compliance and complaints coordinator. Chelsea LePage, compliance and complaints coordinator. And finally, our administrative team, people who receive your calls, support you, answer your questions, renew and process new licensing applications. Chantel Madison, team lead, and Jody Solomon, who's currently acting team lead. Jan Venka, Diana Tomes, Jennifer Mill, Lori Cizak, Mark Cizak, Brandy Miles, Sarah Morehouse, Sarah Hubbard, and Lindsay Campbell. I would like to extend my personal thanks to the team for their hard work and dedication. Oops. Starting with my presentation, as you can see on the slide, one of licensing strategic plans pillars was to maintain confidence in master electrician and electrical contractors community. The examples of that work are listed on that page. I will only cover a few of them. Working closely with ECRA and advisory councils, we have created a list of additional information that will be disclosed on ESA website with respect to licensed electrical contractors, and it will be listed under contractor locator tool. We're in the process of redesigning the tool, and once the new and updated website is ready, we will let you know. So more on this next year. As Joe also mentioned, we are in the process of finalizing competency profile. It is an industry-led project to improve professionalism, skills, and competencies of master electricians. we're very much looking forward to completion of that profile. We're also finalizing a competent DME module, which we're very excited to see, and it will be a free interactive online resource. Just give me a second while I'll go back to my presentation. Yes, free interactive online resource to educate electrical contractors and master electricians on their obligations as license holders. Tentative posting date, December, January. Stay tuned for further updates. We're very excited about this module. There's also great news coming from training. 2022 pre-masters course is now available both in person and online. Also, log in and or visit our website to take a look at the list of virtual and in-person courses that are being currently offered. I'm also very proud to announce that Principles of Electrical Safety online course, which is based on Z 462 standard, has been awarded a Gold Hermes Award in the category web-based training. Hermes is one of the oldest and largest creative competitions in the world. I'm thrilled to see that the hard work, creativity, and passion for learning of ESA staff has been acknowledged and recognized by this award. Next slide will show you some of the highlights of the licensing department work in the last year. I know that these are just the numbers, but they tell you only part of the story of the hard work that we've done. We've been renewing and processing new registrations, arranging master electrician exam, answering calls, and supporting you, the license holders, with your questions and concerns. Also, I would like to say that during the month of November, we at ESA are celebrating a momentous milestone. We have, or very close to issuing 20,000th master electrician license. So congratulations to all of the licensed master electricians who obtained their license since 2005, and those who continue to join the ranks of electrical professionals that ensure public electrical safety in Ontario. This slide will, I would like to talk about continued education for master electricians. This is part of the Auditor General recommendation. At the last license holder meeting last year, I've reported to you on the initiative and what we've done in collaboration with ECRA and other advisory councils. We are further on the road and we're continuing to pursue this initiative. We just earlier this month in November, we just held a first meeting of Continuing Education Committee of ECRA, and we're excited to continue laying foundation for continuing education for master electricians. As Joe said, we strongly believe that continuing education is essential for electrical professionals. We also believe that it is a key element in improving safety of electrical installations, providing great customer protection, and it does provide competitive advantage to your business. Our belief is strongly supported by research and analysis. ESA data shows a defect reduction connected with mandatory Ontario Electrical Safety Code course training. The final decision on whether continuing education will become mandatory for master electricians is with the ministry. If the decision is made to implement it, additional public consultation will be posted on the government website. There's a number of other Auditor General recommendations that we've been working on for the last year. Joe has mentioned Auditor General recommendation number 12, which suggested that there's a change to the licensing regime where other categories of electrician would be allowed to do electrical work. We have, the ESA, we've submitted a report to the ministry with the recommendation to maintain a status quo. In other words, we suggested not to change licensing framework and only allow licensed electrical contractors to offer electrical services to the public. And also, as Joe mentioned, we're very proud of the work that a master examining committee and the working group put together for this project has done to improve and expand master electrician exam question pool. The group has done a tremendous job adding new and revising existing exam questions. I also wanted to say a few words about administrative penalties. Although the provincial election delayed the development of the regulation, the work is still ongoing at ESA and the ministry. ESA is looking to begin issuing administrative penalties by summer of 2023. Administrative penalties, or AMPs, as we refer to them as well, will be subject to the appeal process and will be issued by the director, not inspectors. AMPs will be issued to unlicensed individuals to target the underground economy. They will be issued on a sliding scale up to a maximum of $10,000. It is our goal to educate stakeholders and motivate compliance rather than enforce compliance. It is our priority. However, if all of our efforts to motivate compliance are unsuccessful and non-compliance continue to persist, an AMP would be an appropriate choice. AMPs do not create new or different compliance requirements. Instead, they expand the tools that we have at ESA to ensure regulation, promotion, and enforcement of electrical safety in Ontario. Oops. And finally, looking into the future, licensing department has a number of projects and initiatives planned. As we continue to find ways to add value, reduce burn, and work with ECRA and our other partners in safety to motivate compliance and increase professionalism in the industry. If you have any questions about this presentation and the work that we do at licensing, please send them, and you see the email on your screen at licensingmatters@electricalsafety.on.ca. Now, this concludes my presentation, and I would like to turn the mic to Peter Ewald, the project technical lead at the Lakeland Solutions, for his keynote presentation.
Thank you very much, Susanna. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Ewald, and I am pleased to be here today to discuss Lakeland Solutions Project Speedier, and specifically how this project relates to changes in the electrical industry affecting licensed electrical contractors. Since I'll have a short time, I will be brief, and I'll encourage you to check our website, speedier.ca. So what is Speedier? Well, it stands for Smart, Proactive, Enabled Energy Distribution, Intelligently, Efficiently, Responsive. And the project was born for two reasons. Number one, a desire by the town of Parry Sound, one of our shareholders, to become a net zero smart community. And number two, due to the constraints on the transmission system transformer station in Parry Sound, limiting the growth of the town. So what is Speedier specifically? And how does this relate to changes in the electrical industry? Well, specifically, it highlights additional generation resources, solar and battery energy storage. It highlights smart switching technology on the distribution network, automation, higher loads, especially EV charging. So Speedier really consists of two main components. One, the installation of DERs, or distributed energy resources, and IoT, or Internet of Things, demand response devices. And number two is the design and operation of a microgrid, all located in Parry Sound on the MS3 F1 feeder. So here are some photos of our DERs. We have a 500 kilowatt AC and 648 kilowatt DC solar project. We have a 1.25 megawatt, 2.5 megawatt hour battery energy storage system, the Tesla Megapack. We also have a number of IoT devices. We have 50 hot water tank controllers, 3 level 2 EV chargers, a single level 3 or DC fast charger, and we have 10 residential energy storage devices, Tesla Powerwalls. These are all aggregated and used for demand response when the grid is peaking. The other component of the project is the microgrid. So when the grid is down, the microgrid will form an intentional island and power up to 165 customers in section 1 and 3. This is controlled by the Opus One GridOS Microgrid Energy Management System, or MEMS software, and a variety of reclosers and smart switches. So this slide shows normal grid connected mode on the MS3F1 feeder in Parry Sound. In this scenario, our battery is in grid following mode. This next slide shows the seamless island to section 1. Customers in section 1 will not notice a loss of power at all when the grid is down. In this scenario, the battery switches to grid forming mode and initiates a perfect waveform. This next slide shows the expansion of our microgrid to section 1+3, backing up even more customers if the state of charge allows it. And this scenario is a break then make process. So all of these components in our project highlight emerging trends in the electrical industry, such as more solar, more energy storage, EV charging infrastructure, more customer control, bi-directional power flow within loads and on the grid, as well as software solutions managing all of these systems. Of course, we used LECs on this project for consultation, installation, and troubleshooting. This applies to all aspects: the solar contractor, the energy storage contractor for both the grid scale and residential batteries, EV contractor, hot water tank controller contractor, and high voltage. And as per all electrical projects, safety should be priority, and the new technology has new safety aspects. And here's some of the highlights. Solar generation, for example, is powered by the sun. I think we all know that there are some limitations to be able to disconnect that when it is sunny, specifically the DC strings on the solar side. Energy storage is interesting because energy flows both ways in charge and discharge. EV chargers are a very interesting aspect when we keep seeing higher and higher loads, up to 350 kilowatts now. Beyond that, we have vehicle to grid or vehicle to home technology emerging. Lots of this is usually controlled by remote software. And so to disable lockout equipment may not be enough. You also have to lock out software controls. So in closing, we have some key points, lessons learned to share with the LECs. And as the industry evolves, new innovation technologies are entering the space, LECs need to adapt, learn, and evolve as well. So here's some tips learned from our project. Contact the LDC early for connection requirements and regulations for connecting DERs. Start your ESA plan review early and work through code issues from the beginning. Contact your inspector early on projects and allow for time to educate on both parties. And technical advisors are a great resource, which we used immensely in our project. Stay up to date on bulletins and code changes for clarification. And one of my favorites, listen to Grounded in Ontario podcast. So thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. I'm just going to acknowledge our partners on the screen, and I will now hand off to Cynthia.
Great, thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. So for this year's license holder meeting, I will be providing you with an update on some enforcement activities undertaken by ESA, as well as take a bit of time to speak about a recent conviction and about the importance of worker safety. All right, so last fiscal year, ESA issued nearly 1,400 notice of violations. This included unlicensed contractors that either performed or advertised electrical contracting services. There was 103 investigations that were launched to investigate contraventions made under the Electricity Act. They included advertising and performing electrical work, leaving life and or property defects, and for falsifying a certificate of acceptance. 109 separate charges were laid with 76 convictions secured. These convictions included sole proprietors, corporations, and in some cases, the director who failed to take reasonable steps to prevent the corporation from employing the services of an unlicensed contractor. The total fines imposed by the courts were $111,250, plus a victim surcharge fee that is applied and credited to a special provincial government fund to assist victims of crime. The fines and the fees are all paid to the court. ESA does not collect or receive any portion of it. I now would like to speak about a recent conviction that was a result of a workplace fatality. Otter Energy Inc. was engaged under contract to perform a solar panel retrofit in Embrun, Ontario. On August 4th, 2020, when there were no solar panels installed on the roof and therefore no energized conductors, the worker, which I'll refer to as Jim, was assigned tasks associated with preparing the roof for the panels. Jim began working for Otter Energy in July 2020 as a senior solar installation technician. He had a post-secondary certificate in the heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning technician program, received a worker at height certificate, a training certificate for heat stress awareness, as well as occupational health and safety awareness training for workers. Jim was not registered as an electrician with the Ontario College of Trades, which is now called Skilled Trades Ontario. Between August 4th and August 7th, employees of Otter Energy installed the solar panels on the roof of the project. On August 10th, the day of the incident, the employees installed 2 CSA certified inverters on the roof of the project, converting DC to AC, alternating current, which is required to connect it to the electricity grid. All solar panels are connected into the inverters. The brand of the inverters used were not compatible with the MC4 connectors supplied with the solar panels. Jim was asked by the site supervisor to fabricate extension wires with MC4 connectors on one end and Amphenol connectors on the other, so that the panels that were already installed on the roof would then connect with the inverters. So that afternoon, August 10th, 2020, Jim was working on the roof of the west side of the building. The site supervisor attended just as Jim was in the process of cutting off and replacing the MC4 connector on the wires coming out of the solar panel. As the supervisor arrived, Jim was observed leaning on the metal roof frame, which was subsequently found after the investigation to have been in contact with an exposed pinched wire at one of the solar panels in the 25 panel string. This undetected ground fault caused a significant current to flow through Jim, who was suddenly electrocuted, and despite rescue effort, suffered fatal injuries. He died at the age of 22. This tragic event could have been prevented, and Jim could have continued enjoying his time playing hockey, taking out his dad's boat to do some fishing, or spending time with his family. As a result of this tragic event, Otter Energy Inc. was charged, pled guilty, and was fined $100,000. $50,000 for the conviction under the Occupational Health and Safety Act for failing to ensure that every reasonable precaution was taken to prevent hazards to workers from energized electrical equipment, installations, and conductors, and $50,000 under the Electricity Act for permitting a person to carry out an activity without first obtaining an electrical contractor's license, and for installing a cable in such a manner that the insulation was pinched, causing a short circuit or grounding of the cable. The court also imposed a 25% victim surcharge as required by the Provincial Offences Act. More needs to be done to prevent these events. 2 years ago, I presented on a conviction of a greenhouse fatality where an unlicensed contractor died of electrocution because he was working live. He was 32. The construction industry, you as licensed electrical contractors and master electricians need to help protect the workers. On your jobs, LECs and DMEs can ensure proper oversight by assigning multiple DMEs. Workers need to be properly trained with on-site training and instruction manuals, following procedures, and be provided equipment and tools to get the job done safely. Many of you work hand in hand with other trades. If you see someone, whether it's your worker, another LEC, or another trade doing something you don't think they should be doing, especially if you see unsafe work, raise your voice, say something. Just one time could save a life. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, Karen Rass.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. And I'm just going to advance our slides here. Good afternoon, everyone, and I will just briefly talk about some of the ESA campaigns that are out in market before I go into our annual Hire an LEC campaign. I would just like to expand on Cynthia's comments about some of our young workers being injured on the job. We currently have a youth safety outreach campaign in market right now, trying to reach young workers to encourage them not to cut corners and to work safely so they can have a long, fulfilling career in this trade. And we are hoping that that will certainly have some impact in the days, weeks, and years to come. So on to our Hire an LEC campaign. We are continuing to promote this as a result of our previous campaigns and also a recommendation in the Auditor General report. We are educating homeowners on hiring a licensed electrical contracting business and reinforcing the need for getting a license number. We also want to make sure what homeowners need to know about WSIB and insurance coverage. Certainly, there are dangers of unlicensed contractors and faulty electrical work, and that goes to the underground economy, which we are all battling on a regular basis. We also encourage homeowners to request an ESA certificate of acceptance once the job is complete. This digitally led campaign gained more than 55 million media views, and our website received more than 321,000 clicks to our main page about hiring the right contractor. So we are certainly hoping that for the compliant contractors that you are getting some traction through our website. In addition, we're going to be soon seeing an interview by our Director of Licensing, who will be on City TV's Mark and Mandy show in January 2023, along with a print edition of Canadian Home Trends magazine. This is one of our mainstay campaigns, and we are very excited about this Always On campaign. It's not just a one and done. We're always out in the market with ensuring we get the message out to hire an LEC. One of our partners is with the Homes Group, and I know Mike Holmes is not a licensed electrical contractor, but they are a key partner to making sure that we help get the message out. And the ESA and Homes Group recently published a blog on generator safety. They do videos, they highlight key messages about getting the work done correctly by an LEC, and also on product safety. They are a key partner to try to influence homeowners to make the right and safe decision. Next, what does this mean for our licensed electrical contractors and MEs? Well, certainly when we continue to drive home the messages of, to homeowners, we want to ensure that to make sure your ECRA and ESA number is visible. Whether it's on your business cards and vehicles, you need to make sure that it is visible so people know that you're going to be able to do the work and do it in a compliant manner. And also make sure that you're following up with clients on certificate of acceptance. And finally, follow ESA on social media and help us spread the word about hiring an LEC. The more we all undertake these activities, the better it is for our sector as a whole, and certainly keeps people safe and safer from electrical harms. One of the campaigns that we are about to launch, and we are going to be going out to market fairly soon, likely in early January. But there are a number of things that we are doing to educate homeowners on electric vehicles. We know that there is going to be, and there currently is, a huge uptake in electric vehicle purchases. And as a result, people need to install an electric vehicle charger in a manner that is done safely and ideally by a licensed electrical contracting business. So we want to make sure that when they're purchasing their product, they're looking for an approved certification mark, they're hiring a licensed electrical contracting business, and that they'll also ask for an acceptance of certificate from ESA. We want to make sure that there's an integrated communications campaign that includes not only digital advertising, but paid editorials. We're going to use media influencers, media relations. We need to get the word out, and certainly I hope that you can help us in that regard. We're also doing trade shows and partnerships with auto dealers, and we want to ensure that you're also filling out the proper notifications with ESA. And finally, we're looking at campaigns on, or we're looking at our podcasts for Grounded in Ontario. Thank you to all of those who download our podcasts on a regular basis. They are for our licensed electrical contractors and MEs. They are on the technical side, and I would like to thank the ESA team who participate and co-host with me. We want to make sure that you're finding the information valuable. So anytime that you have an idea for a podcast or comments, please submit them to podcast@esasafe.com. I will let you know that part 1 of the top 10 defects episode, within the first 48 hours, we had 3,500 downloads. So whether you're on the way to a job site or winding down at the end of the day, this is a great opportunity to take a few minutes out of your day and listen to some valuable information that we can help you do your job better. So with that, thank you for your time today. And I'm now going to hand it over to Serge Laflamme, our General Manager for our Northern Territory, to talk about remote inspections. Over to you, Serge.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, skipped one slide. I'm going to be talking about ESA's remote inspections. I know the community's been anxious to hear more about what we're doing with it. So the purpose of remote inspection is to target, standardize, and simplify submission of photos and videos for LECs, and finding a more efficient manner to conduct low-risk inspections. So as you know, ESA inspectors and contractors have been working together using photos and videos for years, but the information's been coming through us in various forms, examples, emails, text, and sometimes even physical. When we show up on site and the trench was closed in, we're actually getting physical pictures. So the quality of the photos and videos varied depending on the individuals also. There's no real consistency on the storage of this information. Sometimes on local laptops or kept on cell phones for long periods of time. So we want to be more consistent. So during the pandemic, we've realized that we had to find a way to be more efficient and consistent. It was time consuming for the contractors and also the inspectors. So a survey was sent on June 2022 to all contractors who had been using remote inspections, the ones that were recorded. We wanted to hear from you and what was working well and where could we improve. All right. 300 of you participated in that survey with an overall positive response. 93.3% of the group rated the remote inspections to be excellent and good. And in the last 2 months compared to 95 in 2021. Later in the presentation, you'll have a chance to see the graph and the results that we got. I've lost control. Okay. So there was no negative feedback from the group. The survey showed, I hope I'm into. The survey showed that most contractors would be interested in participating in more remote inspections if it was incorporated into our risk oversight program. 63.5% of you said you'd preferred photos over videos and live stream virtual inspections, compared to 57% in 2021. Next slide. So the challenges, there was concerns that remote location could be an issue, but only 8.9% of the group said they had issues relating to cell signal or mobile connection. So we had to define expectations and set barriers in order to lessen the burden on business, allowing everyone to be on the same page, but still maintaining safety oversight. So we want a solution that will lessen the burden on you and on the inspectors. The process presently is a little bit cumbersome. We need to create guidelines indicating which element of specific installation should be captured, what and when photos are needed. So as an example, AC unit, for sure, you'd want the nameplate. On the service, as an example, again, you'd probably want a picture of the ground and picture of the panel directory. There's several other ones, but I'm just using examples here. So the survey made it clear to us you wanted an app or an online portal where photos and videos could be submitted. Thank you. So if you look at this slide, you will see that 60.7% rated the experience as excellent and 32% as good. So for a total of just over 93%. Next slide. So 94.6% said you would be interested, was interested in participated in more remote inspections if it was incorporated into our oversight program. Next slide, please. So what we are doing. So we're currently developing an app. The app is compatible with all phone and service providers. The app will capture photos within the app, attaching geocoding. Doing it this way will enable us to have consistency on the quality of the pictures, same size, and we'll also have the ability to capture these photos offline and submit them once you're having access to your Wi-Fi or service provider. ESA will provide guidance on criteria for photo submission. The guidance will be on our website and through the app. This should assist the user when taking pictures, ensuring that all necessary information is captured. The inspector will decide on whether or not photos are accepted. They will make the decisions based on the risk ranking, their schedule, familiarity with the work site, maybe the electrician on site, etc. But we want to leave the inspector to make that decision. The intent is not to sell our fleet or replace all our inspections to virtual, but instead spend quality time with contractors on more complex installations or higher risk inspections. So we will continue to follow up with you to capture feedback and needs as the tools evolve. That concludes my presentation on remote inspections. You will see here, if you have questions, you're welcome to send me your questions to the email below. And I will introduce you to our next presenter, Kara Clareman, President and CEO of Plug and Drive.
Well, thank you very much, Serge, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm just going to get right into it because you folks have already been paying attention for quite some time, and I'm sure you want to get to the Q&A portion of this event. I really like to start my presentations talking about why electric vehicles make so much sense, particularly here in Ontario, And there's a couple of reasons. The first is that transportation is actually the largest emitting sector when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions here in Ontario. So it's larger than industry, it's larger than buildings. And so we really can't achieve our climate goals here in Ontario or frankly anywhere in the world without tackling transportation. So that's number one. And number two, our electricity grid is already relatively clean, which gives us this great leg up, this great opportunity to reduce emissions from transportation. Most of our electricity is nuclear and hydro, a little bit of renewables, and a little bit of natural gas. And so when you plug in your electric car, you're likely going to plug it in at night. It's going to be plugging into more than 90 to 95% no emitting electricity. It's mostly nuclear, hydro, and a little bit of wind. And in addition, that electricity at night is often surplus to the grid, which means, you know, we often dump it into New York State or into Quebec at a loss of money. So by people plugging in their cars at night, they're not only making a big emission reduction, they're also contributing to the local infrastructure, local jobs in electricity, and helping our province actually, you know, gain some revenue from this electricity rather than dumping it into another jurisdiction at a loss. So economically and environmentally, EVs make a lot of sense. And so, you know, sometimes people ask me, like, why would a government provide an incentive to someone to choose an electric vehicle? Well, this is why, when you think about the fact that you're preventing loss of revenue from leaving the province, you're actually putting money into local jobs and local infrastructure. This is the reason that an investment in helping people to fuel switch their vehicle makes so much sense. This is me and some of my board members and staff at the ribbon cutting for our EV Discovery Center in Toronto. Just 1 minute on Plug and Drive. We're a nonprofit that's all about helping the consumer get into an EV, so public education, and really trying, you know, one person at a time, help people make the switch. We run events that, including at this physical bricks and mortar, and then events all over the province to provide people an opportunity to test drive cars with no pressure to buy anything. And of course, we do it, you know, one car at a time, let people drive the car and have that experience. But another really important thing that we focus on when we have the opportunity to talk to a consumer is that total cost of ownership. We do hear from a lot of people, okay, I get it, EVs are good for the environment, but they're expensive, and so I can't really afford one. And what we try to do here, and if you're interested, please do go to our microsite here, find your EV match. We find that the total cost of ownership is something that's somewhat hard to explain, but this microsite does a really, really good job of helping people understand their savings. So right now, electricity is about 1/6 the price of gas. And so when you plug in a car, you're going to be about equivalent of about 28-29 cents a liter compared to the $100.50 plus a liter you're paying now. So when you take into account those savings as well as the savings in maintenance, you actually find the EV over time being much cheaper than the gas car. But, you know, we do have to show people, okay, you are going to pay a little bit more for the car up front. So this is a bit of a pay now and save later situation. And so this site helps you calculate based on your driving, your gas car that you currently have, and then compare it to an EV that you're interested in. And you can actually see your monthly savings in a graph form, and it'll help you to make a decision like, okay, does this make sense for me? Since this is a licensed electrical contractor crowd, I thought we would just spend a couple of minutes on charging, since that's the aspect of this that you folks will probably be involved in. You probably already know that there are a few levels of charging, and EV folks talk in these 3 levels, level 1, 2, 3. Level 1, basically a 110 outlet. all the EVs, by the way, on the market today can plug into a 110 outlet. The only downside of this is it's super slow to do. So if you're driving a plug-in hybrid, if you're someone who does very short amount of driving, like 30-40 kilometers a day, which actually surprisingly about 80% of Canadians drive less than 50 kilometers a day, or one of the older small battery cars, maybe level 1 is perfectly fine. And you might just, the car comes with a cord set that plugs into level 1 charging, so you might not even need a charger. People who tend to buy a larger battery car, such as anything from Bolt, Kona, Tesla, and anything larger than that, Ioniq, tend to choose a level 2 charger. And when I say level 2 charger, you folks know that's sort of the equivalent of a dryer plug or 220 outlet. And they can either be chargers that just plug right into a dryer plug or a NEMA plug, or they can be hardwired in. And either way, they'll get a licensed electrical contractor to either put in the dryer plug or to put in the hardwired charger. And, these will give you about 30 kilometers of driving every hour that you charge. Basically, every EV on the market can fully charge overnight at one of these types of chargers. And you see these in commercial locations as well, not just in homes, but it's basically the same. It's just more robust with a key, paid, sometimes a paying system or some other thing. But for the most part, they're really the same. Of course, level 3 charging is what you might hear of referred to as supercharging or fast charging. This is the kind of charger you would see at a rest stop, en route, highway, sometimes at a mall, but these are, very high powered. You would never have these in a residential environment. And this would allow you to charge at least 250 kilometers in an hour. Now they're much faster than that. Even the Tesla chargers will give you 250 kilometers in half an hour. So it's getting faster all the time. In fact, and some of you as licensed electrical contractors may be hard to install these chargers. Sometimes you need a transformer and all sorts of additional upgrades to be able to install these, because they do have quite a load. So that's sort of the lay of the land for EV charging. We do get a lot of requests and questions about home setup. And we don't refer people to a specific installer, but what we do is we refer people to the Electrical Safety Authority to find a licensed electrical contractor in their area. And we emphasize that people should never try to do this themselves, that they should use a licensed electrical contractor for safety reasons, for permit reasons, for a whole bunch of reasons. And so hopefully that message is getting through. We certainly emphasize it at every opportunity that we can. And then, of course, if people want to find a home charger, a level 2 charger, we do have an online store. Again, very similar to the way we approach the cars. We're agnostic on brand. We have all the different brands of home charger on one site. And the reason we set this up, we really do this, we don't do this as a money-making venture. We set this up because a lot of different websites might have one, like you can get one at Home Depot online, you can get 1 or 2 at Amazon, but there's no place that kind of has them all where you can compare features and prices. And you can also phone our office and ask questions about the different chargers and which one might make sense for the type of car you're buying, for the type of setup you have. You have a very long driveway, you need a long cord, you want to compare warranties, whatever. So as contractors, if you have questions about home chargers, you can also call our number, and we're happy, that's what we're there for. We're happy to assist you any way that we can. And just to make you aware, if you do ever get asked to do an install in a workplace setting, there are so many questions that we get relating to installing chargers in a workplace. Everything from, which ones to choose, and how do we handle maintenance, and should we have a payment system, and what do we do about signage? And how do we let the people in the building know we're doing this? All these things. And we got the question so often that we put together a guide. We call it Lead the Charge. It came out during COVID, so a lot of people maybe didn't see it. If you are interested in this guide and you think it would help you, just reach out to us at contact@pluganddrive.ca, and we'd be happy to send you an electronic copy, or swing by our center and you can pick up a hard copy if you prefer that. And so hopefully that's helpful to you. Now I'm just going to wrap up with some interesting stats about how Canada can lead in this section. You might be surprised to find out, Canada makes a lot of statements about leadership, but honestly, we're actually falling behind when it comes to EVs. I would say we're doing very averagely in the scheme of all the countries out there in terms of our EV adoption. We are seeing an increase, of course, in these graphs show you we're seeing, year over year, month over month increases in sales. It's better, but we're not seeing the kinds of increases we're seeing in some other countries. Canada now is up to about 7.5% of the total new car sales. It varies from province to province because we have different rebate structures in different provinces. So BC and Quebec are over 10%. Ontario's down in the 5%. And, it varies like that based on the provincial incentives and other programs that are being offered. If we had consistency across the country, of course, it would be a lot better. Canada's actually have quite a small market. And when you have 12 different little markets within, one not so big market, it's not exactly ideal for automakers to bring the cars to us. So we actually have to fight all the other countries to get some of the cars coming here. And our policies are not really well aligned. So that's why we're not getting the cars. Other countries are doing much better. So for example, Norway is up to 97% of new car sales are electric. The Nordic countries above 50% new car sales are electric. So, we're down, at the best, average around 7-8%. You can see we've got a lot of work to do. And of course, then the automakers, knowing these vehicles are selling in these places, that's where they're sending them. So not only are we not, having the demand we should have, we don't have the supply we should have, which actually affects adoption as well. So it's a bit of a vicious circle in that respect. And so we need to really get our act together on policies if we want to do better. And just, my 2 cents, we're doing pretty well on charging infrastructure in public places. It's good. It's not good enough. And I actually think multi-unit residential is a big area where we need to do a lot more work. That area is still really far behind most multi-units. Even new builds are not being built with EV capacity, which of course doesn't make any sense. We need to change our building codes. We need better incentives, including for used EVs. We need better financing tools. Right now, EV financing is much more expensive than gas car financing. That doesn't make any sense. And we need our ZEV standard, which is something the feds have promised, but we don't have yet, which, will ensure we get the cars on the dealer lots. EV manufacturing, look, we're doing well there. We've got lots of great plans and I hope they all follow through, and that's really going to help. I think it's a great opportunity, but with the IRA in the United States, a lot of the vehicles we make in Canada will end up in the States if we don't change our policies really, really soon. And of course, on education, a little group like Plug and Drive is trying our best, but and we have other NGOs out there doing similar type of things, but it's not enough. We need to do a lot more to raise awareness. And it's great to see that the ESA is actually, raising awareness itself through its podcast and other ways. So that's really positive. But every company and every regulator and every level of government has to be doing more if we are serious about wanting to get to 100% ZEV sales by 2035. It requires a much bigger effort than we have right now. As I mentioned, Trudeau made a bunch of promises, including, the ZEV standard, including incentives on heavy and medium heavy duty, on buses. Excellent stuff. Let's hope it happens. It hasn't been regulated yet. So if you care about this, you got to talk to your MP. And finally, we've talked about the environmental benefit. We've talked about the economic benefit of EVs. I think sometimes we forget about the health benefit. I'm not going to spend time on it, but if you're interested, people who really know about public health have done an exhaustive modeling and study. It was U of T that did it. It's all available at clearingtheair.ca, basically showing the billions of dollars in social benefits if we were to electrify our passenger fleet, basically in terms of savings on healthcare costs, fewer hospital visits, fewer asthma cases, fewer deaths. Transportation causes a lot of air pollution that's bad for our health, and the value is huge, and we often just don't factor that in to our calculations, and I think it's important to be aware of it. So that's the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Susanna to wrap it up.
All right, thank you very much, Kara, for a very informative presentation. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We have a few minutes dedicated to question and answer session with respect to the questions that you've submitted to us ahead of time when you were registering, so before the start of today's session. And then after that, we have a technical Q&A, which I know everybody has been waiting for. So I have a few questions that I'm going to address, and then I'm going to pass it to Cynthia. So one question that came was, will master electricians require continuing education credit? What I can say is that the continuing education framework is currently being discussed and reviewed with the ministry, as I suggested in my presentation earlier today. Once we have clarity as to what it will entail, what it's going to look like, we will share more information. And please rest assured that we'll give you enough time to prepare, to make sure that you understand the framework, and to roll it out, if that's the decision of the government. I also received a number of questions that related to the licensing fee, renewal fee, both with respect to master electrician license fee and electrical contractor license fee. So here's the questions, and then I'll answer them all together. Why are the fees so high? Have you considered setting up a special class of license fees for retired contractors so they could stay involved in the industry? Would you consider reducing licensing fee? And is it possible to renew ME license fee for 2 or 3 years instead of 1 year? Okay, so what I can say is the renewals are currently set up for to be on annual basis. So you have to pay it yearly, and you have to renew your license yearly. The fee covers 1 year, whether you've had electrical business installations during that time or not. We have heard from the industry with respect to different classes of licenses for different types of license holders. At this point, we don't have the plans to introduce this, but we will look into this issue again, and we'll consult with EPRA and stakeholders, and obviously this will require change in the legislation. With respect to the licensing fees, here's what I'm going to say. ESA licensing fees for renewal and for entry into the license have not been changed or increased since 2013, which is 2013. Despite inflation and investing into our digital technologies such as ME Portal, which is now live, virtual exams, which are now offered from the safety of your home, ESA fees remained unchanged for the last 9 years. With input from our stakeholders, we're looking at our fee structure, and this includes our licenses fee. So we'll more on this in the future. Another question is, how will you use the master competency profile to target incompetent master electricians? Thank you, that's a great question. So the way that we plan to use competencies from the profile is to educate, motivate, and direct master electricians so that they can learn or improve the skills and competencies that are highlighted in the profile. So we're going to use specific examples from the profile, and we're going to targetedly or intentionally use it to work with master electricians who may lag in specific areas. Okay, so send us your questions. I'm just going to make a general comment. Send us your questions via email, licensingmatters@electricalsafety.on.ca. You don't have to wait for this yearly events to ask your questions. You can send them through Plugged In. We are always monitoring, we're always looking, and we're always answering your questions. So with that, I will turn the mic to Cynthia.
Great, thanks, Susanna. I too have a number of really great questions here. These three questions are similar in nature, so my answer will kind of cover all three questions. The first one is, why do we still allow homeowners to take out permits and have someone else do the work? Why are homeowners allowed to pull a permit for a service upgrade? And why is there a policy for landlords with no qualifications and experience to pull permits? So ESA does not create the regulation, we administer it as it's written. Currently, the homeowners are exempt from the licensing regulation, but not the notification requirements. This allows the homeowners to perform electrical alterations within their home, but they are not permitted to allow others to work under their notification. So if the building owner, similar to a homeowner, hires a company to do electrical work, it should be a licensed electrical contractor. So please, if you suspect unlicensed work, please let us know by using our anonymous online reporting tool that's on our website. The next question I have here is, why do solar installers not required to be a licensed electrical contractor? So there is a portion of the work that is exempt from licensing, but it is very limited in scope, and any field connections or modifications must be completed by a licensed electrical contractor. These new two questions, again, are a little bit similar. Can I have a non-licensed helper run wires between electrical boxes with the electrical contractor making the final connection? And why do general contractors hire electricians but not LECs? So unless exempt by the regulations, licensed electrical contractors must do all the electrical installations. So again, if you suspect unlicensed work, please let us know. Providing there is enough information, ESA does respond to all reports of unlicensed work. So going after the underground economy is a joint undertaking, and we can't do it alone. We would like see it, say it to become a norm. So report to us instances of general contractors hiring unlicensed contractors, or if they're doing work themselves. Next two questions here is, what real action is being taken regarding enforcement of underground work? What real penalties are being put in place? And why are unlicensed contractors doing electrical jobs through Kijiji? So through the regulatory compliance program, ESA undertakes a variety of pilots and programs that targets the underground economy. One in particular is the Kijiji partnership that we established in 2019. So if an ad poster who's not an LEC continues to advertise electrical contracting services after being issued 2 notice of violations, it is escalated to Kijiji for removal. Over 125 Kijiji investigations have been conducted on those that continue to advertise and those that have falsely represented themselves as a licensed contractor. And again, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, in 2023, ESA will be able to administer AMPS, which will be another enforcement tool that we can use on those that are working in the underground economy. All right, next question is, why are specialty electrical supplies available for the general public to buy with no license? So we have heard this concern from our stakeholders. Unfortunately, in order for us to enforce this, there has to be a change in the legislative level. So currently there is no regulation preventing electrical supply companies to restrict who they sell their products to. How is the department, next question, how does the department keep track of unqualified people doing electrical work? So for unqualified individuals, that would be something that you would need to contact Skilled Trades Ontario. For unlicensed contractors, those are stored in our ESA's internal database system. The last question I have here is, if you're serious about clamping down on unlicensed contractors, check all the unmarked trucks at suppliers' parking lots. So we appreciate the suggestion, and it is something that has been discussed and maybe something that we look at in the future. So that ends my questions. I'm going to now hand it over to Serge.
Thank you. So the next question was, what can we do to encourage the youth to take electrical courses in high schools or later? So I took this as, what is ESA doing? So as a regulator, ESA's primary focus is electrical safety. So we do encourage youth to take electrical courses and join the trade, but our primary focus is electrical safety. So we've attended shop classes in the past and still do present training, or I shouldn't say training, but presentations in various high schools and colleges. For example, my region, since I take care of Northern, in the last 2 months, we've done 2 presentations in North Bay and the Sudbury area. We've been interacting with colleges of trades and often show up for the intermediate or basic intake so that we have some type of relationship with those young apprentices. We've supported various initiatives with colleges, and as an example, again, in the last few months, and for the last 2 years, we've been contributing and presented at the Jill of All Trade initiative at the Cambrian College in Sudbury. I know there's other organizations out there. If the question was more, what else can we do as contractors? Well, I know there's other organizations out there, for, like, as an example, the IBEW and the PWU unions have sent their own initiative before, like Power Ups. I believe that the OEL also has college bursaries. So I will, if the question was for ESA, I've given you the information here. I will pass the mic to Will.
Thank you, Serge. I'd like to take this opportunity to answer a few more questions that were submitted on behalf of the operations team. So question 1 is, some time ago, I received an email regarding our company defect rating. Will this information be released again? So leading up to the launch of RBO, ESA sent a series of emails to licensed contractors letting them know what their defect ratio would be based on the new system. You can now access your defect ratio at any time through our online services or by asking a customer service rep when you call the customer service center. Question 2 is, I'd like to know how to pull permits for small jobs. A great place to start is the fee guide, which defines what a small job is. Small jobs are for residential and apartment units up to 10 outlets or devices, and you can see what the definition of an outlet or device is in the fee guide. And for commercial, industrial, agriculture, and apartment common areas, up to 20 non-classified outlets or devices. Small jobs are filed when the work is ready for a final inspection. In other words, a rough-in inspection is not required for that type of work. To take out a notification of work for a small job, you can file it online, or you can call the customer service center. Question 3 is, why have my RBO privileges been taken away? So ESA will visit more of your work if we have information that there is an increased risk. For specific programs like permanent generator and for pre-authorized connections, we have a volume and defect ratio limit. For example, 5 residential service repair or upgrade installations done by an electrical contractor in the last 12 months and a less than or equal to 10% defect ratio. The best way to maintain program and pre-auth benefits is to ensure you do code compliant work. For more information on the RBO limits, programs, and pre-auth parameters, you can see the RBO guidebook on our website. Question number 4 was the cost list for 2023 permits. So effective October 3rd, 2022, wiring fees have increased overall on an average of 2%. This is the first fee increase ESA has initiated since 2016. If you have any questions, please visit esasafe.com/fees and forms for a complete copy of the fee guide. With those questions answered, I'd like to turn it over to Technical Advisor Keith Bartlett for technical question and answer session.
Thanks so much, Will. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. My name is Keith Bartlett. I'm a technical advisor with ESA in the Central Region, primarily in the background, answering some of your questions on the Q&A or some of my co-workers. So there's Malcolm Brown, Diana Medill, and Trevor Tremblay, who've been dedicated to answering any questions that you've been answering in the chat. So I'd also like to have a shout out to them and their excellent feedback. We often request or enjoy these conversations with the contractors to help you be more successful and understand some of the nuances of the code. So these are questions that were submitted by contractors prior to today's presentation. I'm just going to go through as many of them as I can. For questions that we don't get to, I believe that there's going to be some sort of communication to answer questions that haven't been formally answered through this process or through the Q&A portal. So the first question we're asking about Kate development of a code rule for all lighting in unfinished basements being on a dedicated circuit. So at this time, there's no plan within ESA to create a code rule. Code rules fundamentally are created at the Canadian Electrical Code Committee. There is a process that anybody can participate in. So all of the LECs that belong to our community have this ability to either ask for a new code rule, to modify a code rule, or to delete a code rule. This process is outlined in Appendix C of your code book. And through that process, you have that opportunity. However, as a contractor or designer, installer, you always have the opportunity to exceed the minimum requirements of the code. So if you thought it was in the best interest of your client or the property where you were working on to have a dedicated circuit, that option is there. It's just at this time, it is not a requirement. We were asked about dealing with unapproved products that are starting to appear in the market. Unfortunately, there's so many different paths to get unapproved products into the market. It seems to be a daunting task. We're gradually expanding the group to work on it. We're also working very closely with Health Canada, who looks at it from a more national perspective instead of just the provincial perspective that ESA has the opportunity for. So we are dealing with it as quickly and as we find out about them, we're making them aware. Amazon's been a great partner. So normally if we tell them of unapproved products, they immediately remove it from their site. However, it's very likely that a different vendor will opt for an identical product, maybe some slightly different wording that gets through the cracks. But as we find them, we deal with them immediately, and we're trying to stem this flow as quickly as possible. We were asked about clarification for dedicated duplex receptacle for sewage or effluent pumps and their requirement for being AFCI or GFCI protected. So there is basically all branch circuits that feed duplex receptacles in a dwelling unit are required to be protected by a combination AFCI. So if you consider that as just the general rule that if you're going to have a receptacle on this branch circuit, there's a high degree of probability that it needs to be protected by a combination AFCI. There are 4 main exemptions to that. So one is your kitchen counter receptacles, so the 15-20 amp T slots, dedicated circuits in a kitchen for refrigerators are exempt from that rule, as well as receptacles that are within 1 meter of a sink or basin that are installed in bathrooms, washrooms, or powder rooms in a dwelling unit. And lastly, a single receptacle for a sump pump. All other receptacles are required to be protected by a combination GFCI at this time, or AFCI. There is no requirement for GFCI protection for sump pumps or effluent pumps in the code unless they're within 1.5 meters of a sink, bathtub, or shower, or 2.5 meters of grade. We were asked if we have ESA handbooks. I'm not entirely sure what the context was. However, instead of using a handbook, we do have a lot of bulletins. They're much more modular, so they're very specific to particular applications or installations. It gives us an opportunity to be more focused on that part of an installation. So they're available through the CSA, and we're constantly updating them and modifying them as the industry continues to evolve. Does pool equipment require bonding when it was supplying a fiberglass pool that does not require a bond connection? So typically all pool equipment that's electrical in nature is going to require a bond conductor to go to it with the branch circuit wiring. That's a standard rule in section 10 of the code. However, if they're asking about the requirements in 68058 to deal with bonding non-current carrying, non-electrical equipment back to the pool, we do have a bulletin 68-7 that outlines some of the requirements around that if the rule itself is not that concise. GFCI outlets above 2.5 meters, do they need to be part of the dedicated circuit required for outdoor receptacles, or can they be on a general purpose circuit? So they can be on a general purpose circuit because basically after over the 2.5 meter mark, we consider them to be relatively inaccessible. So you would need some sort of ladder or other device to access them. So you also would not require them to be GFCI protected once they're above that 2.5 meter mark. However, they would still need to be protected by a combination AFCI as they are a receptacle on a branch circuit in a residential dwelling. But they do not need to be on a dedicated circuit either. How can I get fast information about technical issues that you have on the job site? The best source at the time is your local area inspector. They're your ideal resource. They have access to more, so you mean they can engage their senior inspector, they can engage operations like a general manager like Serge. If it's about licensing issue, they may bring in somebody like Cynthia or Will if you have questions about some of our processes, programs and stuff like that. They can help you filter it out. If it's strictly technical, they may involve a technical advisor in some of the discussions, but your first point of contact is ideally going to be your local area inspector, and their information should be on your notification so that you can know who to reach out to immediately. In a residential service, are you allowed to derate the neutral when upgrading from 100 amp to a 200 amp service? And the answer to that is yes. We outline that in one of our bulletins, Bulletin 4-3, as well as Rule 4-018, Sub-Rule 1, sort of identifies some of the narratives. For that sizing, you're typically going to have number 6 neutral if it's going to be a copper, and number 4 if you want to install aluminum conductor, but those would be based on you selecting your conductors on table 39. If voltage drop or other factors limited you being able to use table 39, you might need to have slightly larger neutral conductors based on the rules in the bulletin that I identified. Inverter generators with a floating neutral. If connected to an interior wiring system without a transfer panel, are there any specific requirements? Technically speaking, small portable generators, which is what an inverter generator typically would be, so those are generators less than 12 kilowatts, are not required to be connected to a grounding electrode. However, if your client or your wants to use one of these as a backup means for powering branch circuit wiring in a dwelling unit during an extended power outage, then there would need to be some sort of transfer device so that we can establish ground within the wiring methods of the building. If they don't want to install a transfer devices, then they're going to have to use individual cords to repower up any equipment, mounting the generator away from the building in a location that doesn't affect the operation of the generator or endanger the people that live there. Is it necessary to install a breaker when installing or replacing a fire pump? And are fuses an acceptable alternative? This is kind of nuanced because when installing a fire pump, you would be following all the current requirements of the code, and breakers are the only acceptable means in the circuit feeding a fire pump. However, if you're replacing a fire pump or working on an existing installation, sometimes there's a little bit more complexity that's involved in that. Any work that you do would need to be compliant with the code. However, there may be fuses that are allowed to be remained in the circuit that are ahead of the fire pump under certain scenarios. So again, it's best to reach out to your local area inspector if you're dealing with a replacement, but if it's a new installation, breakers are really the only approved method based on 32306. Is it permissible to unitap main service conductors that are too short and extend them to the main overcurrent lugs? The short answer is no. So in the last edition of the codes, the 28th edition of the Ontario Electrical Safety Code that came into effect in May of this year, Rule 6-310 was changed, and it now no longer allows splicing or tapping of service conductors. There are some amendments to that in other rules that do have some exemptions, however, such as voltage drop or termination temperature in 4006. But for just adjustments to deal with short conductors, the answer is technically no. The Ontario Electrical Safety Code 26-720H2. What are examples of appliances that are suitable for installation within a closure? So this is the requirement that limits the installation of outlets within cabinets or cupboards or similar enclosures in a residential dwelling. So some of these examples that you might see are carburetors. You might have like a water cooler or filter system that might need an outlet. Dishwashers often will have outlets, receptacles installed that do require AFCI protection as well. Or you might have a sound system that is designed to work within the cabinet. So these are going to be specific appliances that were built to be installed in that environment and need an outlet to support them. Oftentimes, however, the outlet's going to be installed in a manner or in a location that's going to limit its use for other functions. This is similar to the question that Serge has already answered, so I'm going to take a stab at it too. I'm going to have a very similar answer though. What can we do to encourage youth to take electrical courses in high school or later? There's a lot of different things that we can do. For the LECs, I think that one of the options are, advertising in your local papers, different formats, indicating that you're hiring, you're looking for people, because oftentimes an introduction into the trades is the need. So somebody wants a career, they're looking at different options, so they see that you're offering a job, and that might help introduce someone. Such as pre-apprenticeship programs. You could also maybe reach out to your local schools or community centers to see if they're doing job fairs, set up a booth, maybe reach out to some of the other LECs in your area, so that this encourages the kids that are coming around to investigate that. What is being done to address the issue with the code rule around overload protection in regards to relay protection in section 28? So 28306 doesn't really define what types of overload devices are being utilized. So you can use relay protection for overloads. There's a lot of different products on the market. But if you go to the Appendix B note for 28306, you'll see that you need to reference the manufacturer design, so to understand how to set that device or select a device that's appropriate for the installation. So you're not really limited on the type of overload protection that you install, but we want to make sure that you select the proper overloads for the installation so that it's sized effectively and set to protect that motor in the installation. We're asked what our plan of attack is when an EV charging station meets the electrical code, but not the building code. And we basically are limited at ESA to applying the electrical code. That does have a lot of the specific rules around electric vehicles. However, not all the rules are embedded in there. So when we see something that isn't compliant, we might talk to the installer or the homeowner to let them know that there are other concerns, but we normally will only issue concerns that are directly related to the Ontario Electrical Safety Code in the form of a defect. However, other AHJs such as the building department, the fire department, municipal bylaws, things like that may get involved and reach out to the site or the owner to let them know that they need to address other concerns. When changing a range hood fan into a microwave / hood fan combo, why do we have to comply with Rule 26.654 sub-rule D, which is basically saying that a microwave must be on a dedicated circuit? The answer to this is really identified in our bulletin 26-29, which identifies that whatever work an LEC does or an installer does must be to the current code. So if what was existing there meets today's current code as well, then you can reuse that wiring system, branch circuit feeder, whatever it is, to continue to perform for that installation. However, if the site project or the installation requirements are that they're requiring modifications, if that branch circuit or feeder doesn't meet those today's requirements, then it might need to be upgraded for a code compliant installation. So microwaves have evolved over the years. They become, ubiquitous in homes and installations. They also have a lot of energy that they use. So we don't want to overload a branch circuit as outlined in 8104 and the wiring system. So because of the demand that microwaves have, it's almost unilaterally that they will need to be on a branch circuit, dedicated branch circuit to operate effectively and not undermine the performance of that branch circuit or to create a nuisance tripping or other unwanted scenarios. When do I determine if a special inspection is required for a custom installed process? Again, there's no quick answer for this. It depends on a lot of nuances, but sort of a general rule of thumb is if you're doing all the wiring on site, so nothing is being built off site, let's say at a different property or in your shop and transported to the site. So if you're assembling all the components and they're all approved electrical components, then they can normally be involved within the wiring notification on site. Sometimes the area inspector may determine, based on the complexity of it and some of the nuances, that this better suits a field evaluation than the Ontario Electrical Safety Code, because the Ontario Electrical Safety Code is normally looking at the wiring methods to support approved equipment rather than some of the subtleties that you might find within approved equipment. So you might have components, marked devices, you might have systems that have to interact with each other in a manner that the Ontario Electrical Safety Code can't really address. So that's where a field evaluation company can be more dynamic. They have access to multiple standards and installations. But if it's something very simple, like an approved relay that you're going to install within an enclosure, oftentimes those can be done through a wiring notification because they're fairly straightforward. When rewiring part of a circuit that feeds lights and plugs due to a fault, does that circuit now have to be protected by a combination AFCI? As a rule, typically no. And again, this is outlined in our bulletin 26-29 that I've referenced previously. But this is making the assumption that you're just repairing an existing branch circuit. So you're not going to be adding any loads or any additional equipment to that branch circuit. You're just fixing part of it, whether you're replacing a piece of conductor or cable or some other component. You're not adding loads. However, if part of your work is to add another outlet, you might need to add AFCI protection. But again, the bulletin that I referenced 26-29 has a number of examples of that might help you navigate some of those nuances. When will electrical stapler for non-metallic dry cable be passed for use in Canada? This is effectively up to the discretion of the manufacturer. So when a manufacturer makes a product, they can designate what market they intend to use it in, and then they can go, they can use that intention to try to make sure that it's suitable for that market. So we believe that DeWalt as well as Milwaukee have started manufacturing products that are on the market that are now marked for non-metallic sheath cable or NMD 90. So if you go to your local supplier or distributor where you can buy these products, if you look on the label of the products, if it lists NMD or non-metallic sheath cable on it, then it can be used for those. For other products, it might be limited to its scope, so it might only be able to be used for things like communication cabling or other wiring methods that are identified on the product manufacturer's limits of application. This is a little bit more of a nuanced question or technical question, so we're going to have a little bit of math thrown at you if you're interested. Why can't we use table D11A for sizing a 400 amp 4-wire underground service? And then they make the statement, we should be able to use 500 MCM copper for the 400 amp underground service. So table D11A is only suitable for the underground portion of the installation. So if you think about the installation, obviously there's going to be a beginning, there's going to be a middle, and there's going to be an end. So we have to consider all components or all parts of the installation as a whole. We might look at them individually because different rules apply to each part. However, we're going to, once we look at it all, assuming the same cable is used from the beginning to the end, we'll take the lowest value of it throughout the installation and make sure that that is capable of handling the demands of the design. So for the underground portion, D11A would be the table that's used. As we can see on this side here, for 500 MCM copper, used underground in a raceway, we would have an capacity of 489 amps for three current carrying conductors in the cable or raceway. And as you know, we wouldn't include the neutral because it is a balanced circuit. However, at either end where the termination is, we would have to look at the ampacities there. So 4006 tells us that we have to base our ampacities on tables 1 through 4 at those termination points. So if we're going to assume that the termination is 75 degrees, if we go to the 75-degree column in cable 2 for not more than 3 insulated copper conductors in a cable or raceway, we can see that they're reduced to 380 amps. So that would limit them. So it's the termination of them. It's not limiting them within the table D11. But to further complicate this narrative, if at this installation you had done a load calculation or somebody else had done a load calculation for you and determined that the maximum load that was going to be on this, let's say, was 375 amps was the calculated load for this dwelling unit, and that's how you selected 500 MCM, table 13 would allow you to have that protected by a 400 amp overcurrent device. So I mean, under certain criteria, you could use 500 MCM for a 400 amp, 3-phase 4-wire service that's run underground. It could be a code compliant installation, but you would need to have a load calculation to do that. So as you can see, there's a lot of factors that come into that question. It's sort of a yes, no, maybe answer. This question's already been answered. It's based on the licensing and question, but basically a homeowner can do work that requires a notification. Why are there no tamper-resistant guards applied to power bars or outlets? Basically, that's because they can be used in a variety of installations. So not all power bars or outlet adders will be in residential, childcare facilities, hotels, places like that. But there are ones that are available if you have clients or customers that are looking at putting power bars or outlet adders in homes or childcare areas or schools. They should be putting them in with the tamper-resistant requirements. This question, they ask us about the vertical support of non-metallic wiring, which changed in the 28th edition of the code. So standoff and cable ties do seem to be the most popular option that installers have adopted. They seem to make it much easier for them. It's common for them. We're starting to see a number of different methods, though. You are a very engaged and inventive group. So as we go around and do inspections, sometimes we see unique ways. So sometimes, some people are using products like the one you see in the image, or they're using cable ties, or they're spreading them out across a spacer. All of them are code compliant. Is a bulletin same as a regular code? In other words, if my job complies with a bulletin, can I or ignore code? Technically speaking, a bulletin is intended to enhance and clarify the code, as often multiple rules will apply to an installation. So we have our general rules of the code, and then we have our mandatory rules of the code. So you have to consider all the different aspects, sort of like we were looking at when we talked about the D11 question in underground installations. We can't just look at one rule and not take into consideration other rules that apply to the installation. That's what we try to embed within our bulletins, is bring all of those discussion points into it, reference them into the rule, into the topic in the bulletin, to make it more palatable for our installers and make it understandable. Sometimes though, given the evolution within the industry and all the dynamics that exist, we may not withstand a rule within a bulletin. So we may say, notwithstanding these rules, if the installer has taken other steps to meet the intent of the rule, which would be outlined within the bulletin, then you could do another means of installation. So then that becomes up to the designer, the installer, the contractor to decide what path is best for them and their client, whether the code process is the more streamlined way to do it, or whether meeting some of the other criteria that are identified in the bulletin to meet the intent of the code makes a more confined installation. But we aren't really saying you don't have to meet the code, it's just providing another option. So I'd like to again thank you very much for all your great questions, for reaching out. We prefer that you engage us at the beginning of a project or as you're designing a project to make you more efficient, sort of like Will talked about, whatever we can do to make you more effective and to make your clients have a better process. We're here to support you, and thank you for your time. I'm going to turn you back over to Susanna, and thank you for your day.
Thank you very much, Keith. As always, this is one of the most anticipated and most interesting for our contractors part of the presentation. And thank you all who remained engaged and stayed until the end and asking your questions and listening to the presentations. At this point, we're very excited to announce the prize draw or giveaway that we have. We have, as I mentioned in the beginning, AFCI, GFCI testers to give away. What we want to do at this time is it will be determined by a random draw. For that, for those who are present, and we have a list of those who are present in alphabetical order, we will randomly draw 10 names from that list. We will contact 10 lucky individuals by email after the end of today's session, and we will ask for your contact information so we can mail you the testers. And so you don't have to do anything at this time. Thank you for staying in, and as our thank you, you will be eligible to participate in this draw. And at this point, this concludes our official program. I want to thank everyone for their participation and tell you that we cannot be more optimistic moving into the future. Thank you for the questions, and thank you the team for answering the questions. It was a lot of questions that we answered, and very interesting suggestions and propositions that we received, which we will take away and review. Again, if you have more questions or concerns or anything you would like to share, please use the email that you see on the screen. A recording of today's presentation will be posted on ESA website, so you can review technical questions if you will, and answers, or any other information that we've talked about today. Thank you again for attending. Thank you for participating. Stay safe and healthy, and happy holidays to all.